Thank you for being here, James. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with me about everything, not just kids Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in general, because I think that you have a really interesting background and a really interesting story that's worth sharing. So, can you please tell me a little bit about you and what you do, where you train, who you train under, for anyone who has no idea who you are?
Sure, it's probably most of them. So my name is James, and I've been training under Rickson Gracie since like 2003. I met him in Los Angeles, and he kind of took me under his wing right away because I was a little bit, on hard times back then, and so he sort of sponsored me and showed me not only jujitsu, but stuff about being a growing up and being a man and stuff like this. And so he put me in charge of his kids program when I was a blue belt. And then he went to Brazil for several years. And so it was his son and I kind of, and some of the other guys running the place for years at the school. And then more recently, he has moved here to Florida in Vero Beach, and he asked me if I would move here as well and help him assist him in all of his lessons. So that's what I do now. I go to his house almost every day and assist him with his private and small group classes that he teaches.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
What an amazing. So you were just sort of living, just getting through life, doing your thing, and Hickson Gracie just appears. Now, were you training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when you met Hickson, or did you get into it because of him?
Yeah,
Wow.
so I was doing martial arts since I was a little kid, and I was always interested in that kind of stuff. And then I had a friend who was a fan of Hickson, and I didn't know who that was, when I was 18 or 19 or whenever that was. And and I knew who Hoist was, and I was a fan of Hoist, and my friends like, Hoist, yeah, Hickson, Hickson beats up Hoist, whatever. And so then he told me, look, this guy has a school like 20 minutes or 30 minutes from where you live. You need to go check it out. And so it was because of my buddy Aaron that told me about him that I went and seeked him out. Actually it was at the time that I met Hickson, I was literally homeless, and it was another friend of mine who was kind of an older friend who was almost like a mentor. He paid for me to have a month of training at Hickson's. And so that's how I actually met him, is because a wonderful friend gifted me a month of jujitsu. And then, when Hickson heard that circumstance, he just didn't charge me after that.
Wow. What an amazing story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you still friends with the guy that got you the lessons?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Lifelong. Yeah. 100%.
Well, that's
Very
lucky.
much. Yeah.
And does he still
And
train? Right?
do I?
Does he
Oh
train?
no, he never trained.
Oh, so he just,
He's never been interested in it whatsoever. Like completely the opposite. No, never wanted me to show him anything. Like just
yeah.
not interested at all. But cared about me and knew that it would be good for me.
Yeah. What an amazing little fate journey that you went on there to then end up all of these years
Yeah.
later. You said 2003 that you
Hmm.
started with him. Wow. That's a really long
Yeah.
time.
A lot of that time we were separated in the middle because he was living in
Yeah.
Brazil. He went through years of healing after losing his son.
Yeah.
And then, when he came back, we were able to reconnect. And, I helped him a little bit in LA before he moved to Florida with his
Mhm.
lessons for a couple of months or something. And then he said, well, let's go try this somewhere else. And it was just really lucky that at that moment, my wife and I were living in Solvang, which is a tiny little town near Santa Barbara where her mom had been living, and her mom had passed away recently. So she was kind of ready to get out of there. And this little tiny town, wasn't really doing it for us. So we were ready for a change, and it was just serendipitous.
Yeah. You just jumped on, moved across the country.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, that's it. No big deal. That's fine. Whatever.
And
Wow.
we
Okay.
rented this house like sight unseen, just like got something quickly and got in here and getting still don't even understand the geography of this place. I've been here for like half a year. I don't People ask me like where's this or that. I don't know. I just go from my house to Hickson's house to the grocery store and that's it.
And that's pretty much it.
The beach, yeah.
Yeah, there, that's it. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that my geography of America is fantastic. So I'm glad when I said across the country that I was right. So that's
You're
a good,
right, yeah, absolutely. Literally all the way across.
so that works well. Okay, so then you started teaching the kids classes. Now I'm so interested to see how you did this. What were you doing in the kids classes? I imagine that it was probably pretty traditional in terms of how kids were taught and things like that, but
See,
please,
that's
please
where
share.
I don't really know because I don't really have any frame of reference for
Mm,
what's traditional or not. As far as I know for the kids' jiu-jitsu, I just did what Hickson and his son kind of showed me, and it was mostly games. It's just games, games, games. It's like, especially for the youngest ones, like no technique at all, really. Just like
mm,
games that improve balance, games that improve the willingness to be in really close proximity with strangers and games that build focus and this kind of stuff. And I looked at your profile and it seems like you're into the games kind of training, I think, the
yeah.
CLA, right? Which
Yeah,
is
definitely.
really, really popular right now. And it's
It is.
interesting to think about it that Hickson was training us this way so long ago. Maybe not as like polished, as it's becoming now, but similar concepts from way back when. I remember playing these little situations that I felt were so powerful and I felt were often missing from most other places that I went to train.
Mm. I think that's so interesting because to be fair, I haven't spent that much time looking into the way that the Gracies taught. I mean, there's so many different Gracies and they have different, different things that they do. Um, but it recently came to my attention something that I then took the time. It was someone just sent me a message and like, hey, what do you think of this? I was like, oh, I don't really know much about it. Had a look at what I could, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is everything that I'm already saying. This is fantastic. Like I can see that, yeah. So then it's so interesting. Then you saying the same thing that they were teaching with games. They were, they're doing those
Oh, I don't
things.
know about they. I just know about Hickson. I don't know what the other
Yeah.
ones
Oh,
are doing, Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't
But
going and training at other places, like
yeah, no. But in terms of Hickson, like I think that is so interesting that you were then taught the same sort of thing with these games and these this way of evolving techniques rather than this structured drilling that seems to be there. Now, when I say CLA and I do those things, to me, it doesn't really, obviously, that's a bit of a, what's the word, polarizing topic, I suppose, in terms of what it is.
because a lot of people have come out and said very extreme things about this is it and this is not it, and and that, of course, that's going
Yeah,
to create a
100%. And so for me, from a kid's perspective, I'm just looking at it going, okay, clearly you can't give too many instructions at once. They're not going to remember a whole lot. You don't have a lot of attention span. Make it fun, turn it into a game. So, yeah, that's
Mhm.
really pretty
And
much
the thing is,
the way
like
it is.
as we move on as human beings, it seems like the adults kind of start to follow the kids as far as learning goes. As
Yes,
far as attention
definitely.
spans and ability to hold lots of details and all this stuff.
Yeah,
So
my
yeah, the
attention
games are
span's not great. So, yeah,
oh, we're bombarded constantly with all these little dopamine snacks, and so of course our attention's going to be struggling if we
yeah.
engage in kind of stuff with all of these things.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. So then, when you were teaching kids, how did you find things like discipline or, those core, really foundational things of martial arts in general, which are kind of the reason that parents bring their kids to martial arts? for those, your respect, your discipline, your focus, those kinds of things. Was there a particular way that you were able to incorporate that on the mats? Did it naturally evolve? Did you find yourself being very firm? Did you find yourself with a softer approach? How were you with it?
I guess it was, it's just a long time ago,
I know, I'm
but
really pushing you now.
I guess it was fairly individual. I think for the most part, I could have a fairly soft approach because the games and stuff would get them excited and tired and stuff, and then they had a nervous system that was a little more ready to sit still and listen. And then the kind of Socratic approach of not lecturing at them, but asking a lot of questions and engaging them in responses and stuff, keeping them engaged and focused and not looking at butterflies and whatever. Like I remember one of my black belts and one of my really good friends, his son was in my kids program, and he was a handful, a real handful. I mean, it was like I needed to get another instructor in there so that I could devote my entire attention to his son, and the other instructor could just run the class as best as he could. And it was moments like that that I wish I had more tools to
Mm.
deal with that sort of thing. And then I dealt with it the way that I could. And now his son is an amazing young man who would beat the crap out of me probably. He's just a huge beast of a stud muffin. And
Yeah.
it's great to see that, that maybe jujitsu had a part in that. Of course, other things too. But as far as like getting a handle on him, I don't think I had a very good tool set for that because it did require my entire attention. And I think it was just kind of being with him moment to moment because he was so, you know, likely to just disappear or grab another kid or something. You look away for a second.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested in like your perspective on that, like that kind of scenario where you have one child in the class kind of taking up a lot of the time. Is the standard approach to get that child out of that classroom and into their own setting, or bring in more instructors like I did?
I think that I honestly think you did the right thing. Because from my perspective, I want to try and keep the kid on the mat, of course. I want to try and keep them engaged for as much as I can because I know the benefits. You know the benefits of what it's going to be able to bring to someone's life. This fully grown man that can beat the crap out of you now. Like, you can see what can happen. But it's very, very challenging when you are in a position where you don't necessarily have the tools or the instructors in particular. I think that that's really challenging. And it's something that I face more commonly than I used to. Back when not even jujitsu, but back when I was teaching, I've noticed a huge difference in the way that children present themselves from when I started teaching, sort of 2009, 2010. Sorry, no, that's not right. Anyway, 2010, 2011 to now, when I finally then stopped teaching, I just decided like I am burnt out and I need to stop. And then I opened a jiu-jitsu gym and now I'm teaching again, but it's in a different way and it's a different perspective of teaching. But there are more challenging behaviors in general that I see now than I ever did when I first started. And I don't know why. I could speculate, but I don't have the answers as to why that is.
Yeah, we
Um,
all kind of feel like we know
yeah, yeah, we all have an idea. And I have children in my class now that do require more one-on-one support, which requires a lot of patience. And I think that that's the thing that I try to talk to coaches the most about is if you're going into a situation where you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed already, you're not going to be able to give the child the time that they need. And that's not your fault because you're just a person trying to coach a bunch of kids and do your job. And like you, when you started, you were a blue belt doing it. I
yeah,
am still a blue belt. Like, I've been training 5 years. I'm still a blue belt doing this. And
yeah.
so that is the majority of people who are in this role as a kids coach is usually a blue belt or a purple belt. And you don't know anything about kids. You're just doing what you can with what you have. And, if you can have the extra people on the mats, you're going to be less stressed, which means that you can give that child that little bit of extra time. And
Yeah. It seems
if you
like we should have to take a Hippocratic oath or something, at least do no harm to these kids. Like if you're having a
yeah,
bad day, go in there and take it out on them.
I know. I've had this. Actually, this is not jiu-jitsu related, but I obviously would have to be very patient when I was teaching. And to be fair, I'm actually not that much of a patient person. I just hold it in really well. And I remember teaching this kid one day, and I really wanted to tell him that I didn't like his behavior because I think something this can be used in jiu-jitsu as well is it's okay to tell someone how you feel. If you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling angry, you can tell somebody that you have that emotion. You can tell a child because a child can understand that. You can express that. And poor kid, I was trying to tell him I didn't like his behavior, but I accidentally blurted out that I just didn't like him. Shocking. It
Hey.
was so bad. I was like, I don't like you. And then I was like, oh my God, I meant to say I don't like your behavior. I'm so
Get out of my
sorry.
head, bro.
I know, and this poor kid, I thought like his face, I think I crushed him. If he's got trauma, it is 100% my fault for that. I feel very bad for that still. But what I'm trying to say is it's okay to share your emotions with kids. And if you're having a bad day or if you are in the class and it's chaos and you're frustrated, just call it in, call it in, call it in, sit them down and be like, I'm feeling frustrated because I'm feeling sad because I looked around the room and you guys were being a bit silly and you weren't focusing. Maybe we need to do something else. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. My wife a while ago, had some issues with alcohol and stuff, and she had to do a program. And part of that
Yep.
program was a family portion. And that family portion was so wonderful because so long ago I learned what you just described in this framework for sharing your feelings of I statements. I feel this way, and when you act this way, I want to do this action. Like that sort of framework, I think is so valuable for people who have never been exposed to it and
Mhm.
sharing a grievance or sharing a feeling or whatever with somebody so that it doesn't create a defensive response, when you start blaming them for your behavior or whatever, you just explain this is a sequence of events, not anybody's fault kind of thing. And for the kids, I think it's, even more important to model that kind of emotional intelligence because like you say, developing the discipline and stuff, I think it's not so much in those moments of, hey, stop doing that and here's your punishment. It's more like they're watching us and how we communicate and respond to them and how we share our feelings with them and such, just like they're watching their parents. And it reminds me of a book I read. You know who Aldous Huxley was? He's like a psychonaut. He's like a writer who wrote a lot of nonfiction. But he wrote one fiction book called Island, and it was his last book he wrote, and it was like a utopian novel about these like basically Buddhists that live on an island, and they had this community sort of philosophy of raising children where if you're a kid and you got upset with your parents, you just run to a neighbor's house and stay over there. And that was acceptable. Like those parents would take care of you for a minute. And having that community, I think for a parent to think my kid's jujitsu instructor is as trustworthy as the neighbor parent that I would let them spend the night with is such a beautiful piece for a parent to know, okay, they're being modeled good emotional intelligence, they're being modeled good discipline, they're not going to snap and reinforce any negative behaviors that are already apparent there. And I think that's a beautiful way of trying to look at and create kids programs, which, I'm thinking about again now as I'm here in Florida.
Fantastic. So you're looking at maybe opening up some other kids programs again.
I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I've kind of shied away from opening any schools for my entire time just because I've seen other people struggle with them and stuff. It's like I don't know if I want to do that. I kind of love hopping around and teaching seminars and doing private lessons but I do miss impacting lives like that and those young lives are the ones that you really see the most impact and it's I'm sure you've seen it a million times already, but you get the kid come in who's so shy and really nervous and not sure of themselves. And after a couple of months of games and playing around and dodgeball and jump rope and all the chase and whatever, and then they've got friends and they've got confidence and they're opening up and they're coming out of their shell and they're blossoming and it's a beautiful thing. Or the one that's, super overly aggressive or traumatized or whatever and starts to feel like, okay, I'm safe in my environment. This is a chaotic place, but nobody's harassing me and they start to calm down a bit. I mean, it's just so beautiful to see behaviors modify in more healthy ways based on how we run these classes.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it is, you've nailed it. It's the one beautiful thing that I see. Again, I try to say to people, yes, okay, we want to see Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. Of course, everyone wants to be able to feel like they're learning a skill, or a parent wants to see their kid doing something really cool, and I do blame social media for this. 100% I blame social media for this because everyone posts their highlight reel. And so you've got kids that are doing incredible things. No doubt, probably
But the
better
parents
jiu-jitsu
don't
than I am.
understand that those kids probably won't pursue that longer than they are forced to. Like
Yeah,
I've known so many child champions, and as soon as they move out of the house, they don't want anything to do with that shit anymore because their parents have been putting so much pressure on them, or whoever has been putting so much pressure on them. You know, it's kind of sad to see. Like they create so much talent, and it just burns that candle out like that before they even reach their full physical potential.
yeah, yeah. I think that that's something, this idea of early specialization, and I think it's something that's been brought to my attention recently, actually, is really this concept of early specialization and the way that it is so detrimental to kids in sports in general, not even just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but yeah, and it is this thing where we're seeing these things all the time on social media and we have these expectations. And I think that coaches then kind of can fall into that trap as well, where they're seeing amazing kids doing amazing things and thinking that that's what they need to do in their classes. And
Because they're trying to make little champions and that's
yeah,
amazing and that's cool and it's maybe even noble in some way. But most of the kids that are in there don't need to become champions. They just need to become
good people.
solid, well-rounded people. Yeah. And you see it, you've seen it in jiu-jitsu for years too, and the early specialization. And you see guys that are black belts, they go in tournaments because they're amazing at half guard. They've got a half guard sweep. They don't really have any other aspect of their game that's amazing. It's of course it's great, but they'll go in and they'll pull half and they'll stall for 9 minutes and then they'll nearly get a sweep and then they'll win on advantage. And this is a really specialized way to get a bunch of medals. But if they go try to apply that to any other aspect of their life, it's like this is kind of worthless. I'm just like looking to trick people. And then if they go try to get into a fight, most of
Oh,
the time they just get pummeled. If they try to do MMA or street fight with their little half guard pulling,
yeah.
sweepy trickiness, that doesn't work out. So this is such a way to game the rule set to get a medal that
Mm.
doesn't really translate to any benefit in the rest of your life other than, oh, everybody thinks I'm cool because I swept somebody.
Yeah. And what does that even, for anyone outside of jiu-jitsu, what does that even mean? Like,
Yeah, it
what does
doesn't mean
it
anything.
do? It doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing. I'm pretty sure my parents still have absolutely no idea what I do. And I try to explain what I'm doing, and they're like, that's fantastic. I don't get it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. Like, I'm doing
Yeah.
something on the internet and it's pretty cool. And they're like,
I'm doing karate, okay? So
yeah,
that's
that's it. I'm doing karate. They're like, why are you
it's
close to each other? I'm like, it's kind of part of the thing. It's fine. You'll figure it
it's kissing karate. That's what it is. That's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, so I think, yeah, the whole part of what I do with the art of coaching is literally just explaining to coaches that you don't have to have this perfectly polished program. You don't have to have a bunch of 7-year-olds that are absolutely killing it in the competition scene. Just make a lovely program for kids that makes them feel good, gives them something that they look forward to, gives them
Yeah.
some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu techniques, and that's it. And it's a trap that I fell into myself,
Yeah.
100%. When we first opened, we had a lot of kids come from different gyms because of various reasons, but they were competitor kids and they wanted to compete. And that's awesome. And we fell into that trap of, okay, like let's compete, let's compete, let's compete. And it was wrong. It was the wrong, I made a mistake, 100%. And I own that and I recognize that because they burnt out or they didn't enjoy it anymore, or some of them still compete. I have a little boy who is in America. He's doing Jiu-Jitsu Con this weekend. Incredible. That's something that he loves and he wants to go and do that. And I support that 100%.
Dixon says all the time that it's like something like 80% of the students are going to drop off, like pretty quickly. And like I think back to Hickson's Academy when I was coming up, and for the adult classes, for the most part, it was only savages. Like anybody who wasn't down to just get down and beat down and fight hard all day, every day, blah, 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 and not tap to neck cranks because that's not a choke and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they split instantly. They were just like, whoa, this is crazy. I'm not into this. And I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. Um, Yeah, so this concept of losing people all the time, it's like there's a very small percentage of people out there that are going to go and pursue a world championship or even just a regular championship, and want to have the discipline and the drive to train in the way that you need to in order to become physically and technically superior to a bunch of other people that are also training every day, all day. And those schools that focus on that, they end up with a small number of savages that are tough, and sometimes they're really technically good too, but a lot of times they're just tough, and they lose all the people that actually need this
Yeah.
stuff. And it becomes just a sport team and not a community service and nothing to do with really helping people. And so for me and Hickson now, it's like, we'll train competitors, sure, but our mission is to train the people who have no interest. I mean, sure, they can compete if they want to, but their interest is protect my family, feel good in my body, use jujitsu concepts to improve my life, learning about, if I'm timing clinching a kickboxer, I can also think of timing as, is this the right time to bring up this grievance with my wife while she's kind of upset about something else? Like these concepts are so universal. The concepts of connection, the concepts of leverage, the concepts of distance management, like this person over here, I want to help them, but I can feel like it's going to be a huge cost to me. So maybe I need a little bit of distance. I need to manage the distance with this person. If I want to help them, I can't let them get too close because then, I might be going a little so deep into this that it diminishes my ability to help others.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really do. And then that is something that we have learnt. And I think that most gym owners are probably going to find themselves, and coaches in general will find themselves at that crossroads at some point where it's kind of, what do you really want your program to be? And what do you really want to provide to your community? And you just got to keep sticking to what you believe in that. And I think that along the way, you're going to be given so many different opportunities or so many different wavering thoughts of what you should or shouldn't do. But if you really believe in what you're doing and the reasons that you're doing it, you can't really go wrong there. And
I believed I was responsible for years to show someone everything they need to survive an attack by a 280-pound meth head in an alley. And I was like, I need you to be able to block this full force punch with my body weight. And, like, again, I'm only training savages at that point.
Yeah.
Everybody who actually needed that, as soon as I started making this face, they're like, "Oh God, like this is not for me. Like I'm just gonna avoid alleys, you know?" It's like that was my failure as a coach, or that was my path at that moment to only train, really tough fighters, and I didn't know better that I wasn't reaching the people who were weaker or smaller or more nervous or whatever, and so now I don't want to lose even one of those people. I don't want to do anything that might scare someone away that could benefit from learning self-defense and the things that jiu-jitsu has to offer, those
Mm.
concepts. So it's been wonderful to be with Rickson again because as he's gotten older, he's gotten so gentle and so thoughtful about how to reach those people who aren't naturally aggressive or athletic or whatever, and come up with techniques that work for them, that they don't find a lot of failure or difficulty, techniques that are so balance and base oriented, so um, it's so much more accessible to them, and it doesn't come off in this way of I can't do this. Like it's never like this is too much for me. The progression is gentle.
Mm. That
And then,
would that
you get the person that comes through that's tough and you can progress them really fast. But
yeah.
skipping a step scares people away, and that's something that's been beautiful to watch him teach people and assimilate that into the way that I teach.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question about how you've watched his training and your training evolve from, the early 2000s where it was pretty tough. It was rough and it was
Yeah.
tough and it was only the best survived to now, jiu-jitsu is everywhere and it's so much more accessible, but it's also evolved in many different pathways
Mhm.
and how that looked. So it's so interesting that it's become for you guys, as you have progressed and gotten older as well and more experience, it's become something that is more, I'm going to say holistic, I suppose, but in a way that it does
Really,
kind
that's
of,
a great word for it. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it
Because
encompasses
the way
every
we were
aspect
training
of being.
before, the way that I was training before, and I was probably misunderstanding a lot of Hickson's teachings at that point, to be fair. But it seemed to me back then we're training fighters, and now it seems like we're training people, like not
Yeah.
fighters, just people to feel like, man, like something has upset my organism and I'm emotionally compromised. And now I've got to do something like teach a kids class, and I'm worried that I'm going to be reactive. And so now I have this tool that I learned from Hickson. I can just breathe and move. I do that for a minute or two. The chaos and the rumbliness, kind of dissipates. Whatever problem that I was encountering is still there, but it doesn't exist in my heart and my brain like anymore in a disruptive way. I can focus. I've centered myself just through simple breathing techniques that he teaches to pretty much everybody that comes through for a lesson. He puts a lot of emphasis on breathing and teaching kids breathing. You were talking about earlier about the kids program and all these competitors coming through, and I'm sure they're doing all this amazing, cool looking stuff. And then the other parents are like, "Well, why can't my kid do that?" And I'm like, "Man, for me, it's so much more impressive if a kid can sit still and quiet for 5 minutes than if he can do a flying arm bar. Like, who gives a shit about
Yeah.
how is that flying arm bar going to help him in his life more than being able to sit still and be content?" For 5 minutes and be quiet.
Yeah. And I think that that is something that I still talk to parents about regularly is when they come in, I talk about the first 12 weeks of jiu-jitsu. And then they come in, they're super excited. Their first session, they love it. They're so excited. And they sign up and I let parents know, the first 12 weeks is usually the hardest. Your child's going to love it for about 2 weeks. And then they're going to start to resist it a little bit. They're going to be like, oh, they start to realize it's a little bit harder than they thought, or it's maybe not something that they want as much. And then they're going to resist, and you're going to have to push through this. And when it gets to a point where you cannot push through it, I need you to talk to me. As your coach, come and talk to me. Let me know where you're at so that I can help you to push through that. Because once you get to week 4 and 5, they're back to loving it again. But it's going to
Mhm.
happen, and it happens almost every single time.
A little
And
window of insecurity.
yeah, and then one of the biggest parts of that is that they see the kids that have been training for so much longer and
Mm.
they can't do the same movements that they can, or they can't feel the same way that those kids feel because it's new to them. They're like, it's so unnatural what we're doing. It's not a normal thing. We're taught our whole lives to keep our hands off each other. And then all of a sudden, these little kids have been like, no, you can't touch, hands off, whatever.
Mhm.
Now go and sit on top of someone. Like, I don't blame them for feeling a bit weird about it.
You
So,
sure this is okay?
yeah. And then they're looking at me like, you want me to sit on them? I'm like, yeah, like you'd ride a horse. And then they sit on someone in mountain and they're like,
Squash them
what?
flat.
Yeah, and now squish them. And so then when parents are on the sidelines and they start to see that too, and they're like, wow, that kid is amazing and doing all of this stuff, but my kid's not, it feeds into that 12-week cycle where I'm like, okay, that child's been training for like 4 years. And also, they're doing something, they're on a completely different journey to what your kid's on. But did you see the way that your child cried for the first 2 weeks and now they've just jumped on the mats, they've run over and said hello to people and they're playing tag before class? To
Mm.
me, that speaks way more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you allow parents to communicate with their kids during class?
No, no, I don't. Of course, there's always still one or two that try. I
Sure.
do try to set that boundary. I probably need to be a little bit firmer than I am. But overall, they're pretty good. They don't
I
talk.
know I know gym owners that make parents sign a contract that if
Yeah,
they speak to their child during class, they will be asked to leave.
I have seen this, and I mean, I've seen people talk about this lately. I've seen even a couple of friends that I have that are in, I'm gonna say Lake Tahoe, but I could be really wrong. Is that a place also? I don't
It is
know.
a place. It's a nice place.
Beautiful. So probably that is the place. And they have a kids specialty gym, and they do something similar where it's like you need to. It's more of like a what's an agreement, I suppose they call it, where it's like this is your
Mhm.
expectation and your role as a coach or your role as a parent. Sorry. And
Yeah.
so I like that. Would I do it myself? I don't think so. It feels a little rigid for me. I want them to feel like they're part of a community, and I don't know if putting that restriction in place would diminish that. I don't know.
As what we do evolves, I think it will become more and more, I don't know if scientific's the right word, but giving them the opportunity to overcome something in an exponentially increasing, like barrier kind of thing. The same way we were talking about earlier, giving someone the right amount of stress in that moment so that it's difficult for them, but they can find success. To me,
Yeah.
that is the epitome of being a good partner or being a good coach. And sometimes I think the beautiful thing about the CLA approach to teaching, and I've thought about this before CLA was a catchphrase in Jiu-Jitsu, it's like sometimes I feel like I need to teach the training partner, not the student that's trying to do the technique. You teach the training partner to do the right movements, and you will elicit the right response from the
Mm.
student. And I believe deeply that jujitsu or um, techniques that you discover will be remembered in a deeper place than techniques that I show you or teach you, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And so that's part of what I love about the games approach is that they're discovering this stuff, and I'm not a neurologist or neuroscientist or whatever, but I assume or imagine maybe ignorantly that it's a different part of the brain that's working, when I almost, it's not, when I create this as opposed to
Yeah.
just regurgitate step by step what someone showed me,
Yeah.
it's holistic, like you said.
Yeah. You remember things in a different way. I think yeah. And I have seen my kids progress differently than our adults. Now, our adults also use CLA, but kids don't have the expectation to be shown things. Kids are
Hmm.
happy to just move and just do.
They're
And
happier to not be
yeah,
shown things, right? Yeah, they
I
don't
don't
want
want
to
to have
be
to sit and
shown
be shown
five
something. Yeah.
videos. You lost me
And
on
what
number
you,
two, buddy.
yeah. Telling me what you want me to achieve, and I'm just going to find a way to do it. And I
I'll wing
love
it.
that.
I'll get it done.
That's it. As long as knees don't end up in weird places, generally it's pretty okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And so that's the really cool thing that I want to learn more about the CLA approach is, how to model this stuff. And
mm,
of course, we do it trial and error because, oh, okay, when I did it that way, everybody got kneed in the face. So now I need to change this a bit and say, okay, you're not allowed to post up on whatever, like we got to keep modifying the game to make it safe or make it get the result that we want. And I'm super interested in learning more about that, but I don't know where to go to learn about that stuff. Um, and
there's
I don't
some
want to kind of make it up as I go either.
Yeah, there's some fantastic resources and things I'm happy to send through if you'd like.
Cool. Yeah,
More
love
just
that.
books and things like that. Rob Gray is a really great author and speaker as well. He sort of he's pretty much the founder of like ecological dynamics, I suppose,
Hmm.
where a lot of like CLA has come from and those kinds. It's just basically like constraints. Like you're just putting a constraint to stop something from being
Right.
able to occur. So, I mean, I did something
You're
yesterday.
stopping
Um,
in jiu-jitsu, you're stopping a scramble for the most part, right? You just, you don't
yeah,
want any kind of scrambles. I mean, I guess you could do scrambling and constraints, but that's pretty difficult.
yeah, you can't. Yeah, scrambles is pretty hard to evolve without scrambling, really, because you just go
Craziness.
through
Yeah.
craziness, which I love. We've got some kids that, man, they just go, and it's so cool to watch them scramble like that. I love it so much.
So nice
Um,
to be made out of rubber bands, not worry
yeah,
about getting
no, doesn't everything? It's like I turned like I'm over 30 now, but it's like I turned 30 and all of a sudden that rubber band is really tight and not working anyway in the way that it used to. Like, man,
and
I
soon
wish
it'll
I,
start to crack.
yeah, that's it. I'm looking forward to that moment. Um, but yeah, it's just so interesting to see. I did something yesterday with our kids. I find sweeps is really, really hard to evolve for kids that are aged between 4 to 6. Um, I think it's a actual body development thing. Their abs haven't quite developed yet. They don't quite have the coordination. Their grips aren't very strong. So I do think it's a physical thing rather than actually like a neurological mental thing. I don't know that. I just made that up, but I think sounds good. But what I'm trying to say is I did this game yesterday where I knew that it was going to be hard and I wasn't sure if they would be able to do it. And so the person on the top, like the top person standing, basically was just trying to be a tall tower and just not fall, essentially. So basically, I took out pretty much everything other than just don't fall. They
Hmm.
couldn't even use their hands. And the bottom person was trying to get the sweep. They had two hooks in and grabbing the legs.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I was like, okay, it's not working because they were letting go of the legs and then they were kicking the kid as hard as they could, hoping to knock them down. And so I think that that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay. Like just because you've been doing it for a while or something doesn't mean that it's perfect every time. Like I looked at that and went, that didn't work and
Now
that's
you're
okay.
making me think you're teaching kids physics in jiu-jitsu class. Look, this thing's gonna just move that way if you apply pressure, but if you block it here and push there, oh, look,
Then
physics.
all of a sudden we have this tipping thing that starts happening. Yeah. So I tried it again today. I was like, okay, this didn't work. Clearly my explanation wasn't right. let's try not kicking our friends as hard as we can on their hips. Let's try
Hmm.
and hold on to those. And I just gave them different instructions and it worked, which was great. I still had to be very close by. The group's only small. Um, but it worked. And I was like, okay, so look, it goes to show that you're not always going to get it right the first time. It's not always going to be perfect. Your games might work or they might not. And when they don't work, just change them. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. Yeah.
Yep. But it sounds like you're in a similar boat where you're creating games, you're creating novel new games to try to get behaviors. And it seems like there's got to be, I mean, I know, what's his name? Greg? Is he the
Yeah.
one that's been, Saunders? Yeah, he's been pushing
Yeah.
it pretty hard. And
Yeah.
it, and he's probably made a lot of games that he knows through his own trial and error are really successful for jiu-jitsu. Do you know if he's put out any like game examples, any videos or anything like that? Has he?
Yeah. 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 I actually recently spoke to Greg. Really nice guy. Like I know that it gets pushed, that he sometimes gets pushed in a bad light. I think he just gets frustrated sometimes because he just has to keep
Yeah.
repeating the same
I
shit over
think
and over again.
he's obviously a really, really smart guy, and I think he probably gets kind of frustrated with talking with people who aren't as smart as him, and
Yeah.
a lot of $10 words, and like I think
But
he kind of does that
it does make it
to
hard to understand too. And I
sure.
totally understand and respect that. And it was something that I was really nervous going into the chat actually, because I was like, I'm not really that scientific person. I'm just happy to have a chat and discuss kids. So I didn't know what I was getting into a little bit. But
Yeah.
his
Yeah, a
approach to
lot of the
kids,
things that he says, you got to go kind of
a little
find
bit,
a
yeah. And
dictionary. What is that?
until you know. And once you do the research and you understand it, it's fine. But like if you don't, you're like, what are you talking about invariance and variance and constraints and all these words that's like
Yeah.
it it makes it hard to understand and I totally get that. But the way that he explained how he would teach his kids was really cool. And it was pretty much exactly the way that you've just described that you were teaching your classes, the same way that I teach my classes. It's
Yeah.
not overcomplicating it. It's making it fun. It's not having that pressure of early specialization. And it's just enjoy it. Make it a bit
So
light. Joke.
you're obviously way more exposed to this than I am as far as like modern ecological dynamics,
Mm,
CLA. I'm curious because I've over time tried to incorporate these things, whether I knew what the name was of it or not, and try to get someone to discover what I want them to do, but
mm,
they're not getting it. And I know it's because I'm not giving them the right cues, and I'll get better at that as I go. But in the meantime, I've found it impossible to not give here, grab like that, not like that, grab like this, and it seems like, yeah, maybe I could get them to make that grip switch, but it's taking a lot of time. And to try to encourage them to find it after a few minutes, it's just like, when does it become better for me to just give it to them as far
mm,
as this is the behavior that's going to be successful and this one is not going to be successful?
mm.
Most people get that once they lose this grip over and over, they self-organize, but some people don't, and is it okay under that philosophy to give them the answer?
Yeah. I mean, my partner would be a great person to have this chat with because he is he's the CLA guy. He's the black belt CLA guy. Um, I'm just the kids guy. but but in terms of honestly, I think that from my experience in being in the adults classes and being a student in the adults classes myself, eventually you figure it out. And some people do figure things out faster than others. But if you can see that something is not evolving, it's usually because of an error that we're making as the coach. So,
Sure.
say that I want to evolve a figure four grip. I don't see that evolving without me putting someone in it because when is that ever going to be like a natural sort of grip that a person's going to try and use? it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
So I would start with something really small, and it's the same way I would teach a kid like an Americano or a Kimura or whatever. It would be like, okay, we're going to start with, controlling here. Your goal is to be able to then get, control your own wrist, however that would look. And so then I'm giving them the grip and I'm showing them the grip that I want because I'm putting them in it, but I'm also demonstrating it. Like I'm not just going to say like, okay, you're just going to put your hand there. Generally with these kinds of things, even with kids, if I see that they're grabbing the arm like underneath, so say like the arm's there and they're going like this, I'm like, okay, let's just switch it. Just switch it over
Okay.
because
So you will help them there.
yeah, honestly, like if I can see that they're continually getting it and the kid keeps pulling their arm out because the grip's not going to be strong, I'll
Yeah.
usually stop them and be like, can you see how like every time you keep going here, they keep being able to
Yeah.
pull their arm out? It's
It's
not,
it's so it's fascinating to me to think about, is there a word or a body language or some form of communication that I don't know that would cue you to make that switch?
yeah,
That's not just me giving you the answer. I mean, like you said, it's our failings as a coach, and I just so fascinated with how this is going to progress and evolve to the point where we figured it out how
mm,
to elicit responses from all different types of learning styles with this such a small input, like that's
yeah.
so fascinating for me. I'm
I
really
think
excited to learn about
the
it.
coolest thing that I've seen is heel hooks. Being able to evolve a heel hook because that was terrifying for us when we were talking about, and again, I don't teach the adults, but when we were talking about heel hooks, I was like, I don't know how you're going to do that because we're just going to have knees breaking everywhere. And I'm terrified of that and I'm not okay with that. But it became very, very small. And because you look at the things that don't ever change. So when you are looking for a heel hook, you need connection to the hips,
Yeah.
and you need the leg above the knee, and you need the butt. But there are certain things that don't change. So if I can put them in a position where they understand those certain things will never change. It's the same way an arm bar, you always need to have an arm between your legs, something behind the elbow, and your hips attached to a shoulder. They don't change no matter what position you're in. Then all of a sudden it gave them a safe understanding of what never changes and then how they could explore how to get those particular submissions with
Yeah.
safely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And then little kids, I'm like, all right, guys. But honestly, and I had this conversation, it was something that I asked Greg myself because I was like, how do I teach the ending of a submission? Because, I mean, I
Oh,
know what
that
I,
danger moment.
yeah, like how do kids don't necessarily know when to tap. How do I know when they need to tap? And he came up and he explained things that I went, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Perfect. Yeah, cool. But it was always that moment where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of drilling this because I need them to feel it without I need them to feel that moment when they tap without them trying to resist so much that they hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's something that's still evolving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does CLA um how does CLA deal with the child that is training with a little too much ego or
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that kind of thing is interesting. I mean, is it just a lesson that you learn in the game? How that hurts? Okay, maybe I shouldn't use so much ego, or I mean, that would be interesting. I guess I need to listen to Greg more, but it's hard to listen to him without feeling like an idiot.
Have a listen. Look, honestly, have a listen to what I just did with him because it was pretty straightforward, plain English on that one.
Okay.
And I just had literally just talked about what I do with kids, what I find challenging, what he does or did because he doesn't teach kids anymore. Um, and I got some good answers for myself out of that as well, actually. And yeah, that was one of my questions was what do I do when the kids like we're playing a game and there's a winner and it's like I won, you didn't win, sucked in, you lost, and it's like yeah, okay. cool,
Mhm.
but also that kid's like a year younger than you and half your size. So perspective, let's try and figure this out.
Yeah, or
Um,
the kid that just continually hurts people, over and over again.
yeah, yeah. And it is challenging. And each time that I have a new child walk on my mats, I have a new challenge with something like that in terms of how do I evolve that? How do I stop that? How do I make them feel, why do they feel like they need to hurt someone? Like what's going on in their brain? Is it because they feel pressure to be the best? Is it because they don't have the social cues? Is it a neurodivergent thing where they don't recognize the social cue that something is too much? They might not even recognize that.
A lot of flavors.
There's so many different things that it just branches, and I like that challenge, and I've always liked that challenge of understanding why is a kid doing something, because I firmly believe that kids are not inherently bad or naughty. There is a
Little mirrors,
reason.
little
There
mirrors.
is
Yeah.
a reason to a behavior every single time. And it's just, do you want to figure out what the behavior is? And I don't expect every coach on the mats to do that, because that's a lot of work for you when you're just trying to do your job as a coach. That's something that I do personally because I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I always have been drawn to those problematic, more angry kids because that's what I was. I was a
Yeah.
problematic, angry kid, and martial arts helped me a lot. And so it feels like paying it forward. And so maybe I know a lot of schools and a lot of gym owners, they're really quick to just eliminate any disruptions from their school. They're just boom, out, 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 out. And that's maybe that is the best way when you think about the well-being of everyone else. But I've always just had a sucker soft spot for those problematic cases to where I'll just take them off to the side and okay, rest of the class, sorry, you've got to suffer with my purple belt, I'm gonna go over here and try to civilize this savage. See what I can do.
Yeah, I think I've got the same problem. Honestly, I do.
I guess it's just codependence.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to be able, I want to fix you. It's
Yeah,
like, I
I know how to do this.
can fix you, I'm sure. That's really, I'm sure that I've got a deeply impacted issue there myself. But honestly, I just wanted to be able to create a space where kids feel safe to train. And I think that that's it. There's no
Yeah.
big secret to anything. Yeah.